Welcome to the Darkstream. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and, of course, SJWs always lie. Now, what a lot of people may not realize is that the main focus of this book, which for nearly 2 years has been one of the best-selling political philosophy books, is that it's focused on the idea that culture is upstream from politics. One of the reasons that the left has been so successful, one of the reasons that the cultural Marxists, the Gramscians, have been successful in a way that the economic Marxists, the communists, have not, is because they focused on changing the culture rather than changing the politics. If you change how people think, if you change the frame of references, the mental frame of references that they have and on which they operate, you can affect their politics much more effectively, and you can do so from a much younger age. And so one of the things that I've been trying to convince people of is that we need to build new, positive, civic, civilizational organizations, institutions, and products. So that's one reason why Castalia House exists. You know, Castalia House publishes both fiction and nonfiction. You know, there's a reason that everything you see these days on television is constantly pushing black men and white girls and black guys, Asian guys and whites, Muslims falling in love with non-Muslims and that sort of thing. That is an example of cultural warfare. I mean, it's really quite absurd if you're thinking about it from at all a realistic point of view. I was watching an episode of The Flash recently, and they changed the Flash's girlfriend Iris from a white red-haired girl to a black girl, but then the other couple that they were putting together was a white girl with a black guy. Those are the only two couples. Literally nobody, literally there are no couples where the races match, which is kind of ridiculous, and it is sickening, and it is absolutely irresponsible and societally destructive. Because people say, "Oh, well, what's the matter with it? What's the matter with it? What's so bad about it?" Well, I'll explain. If you look at, let's put it this way: let's forget race. Let's forget whether let's forget it has anything to do with that. Let's say your son or daughter is going to get married. Now, if they were going to marry someone and it was going to double their risk of divorce, more than double their risk of contracting a sexually transmitted disease, increase their risk of domestic violence by as much as a factor as 11 times. That's over 1,000%. Would you advise that? Would you celebrate that? Of course not. It's insane. Nobody in their right mind would push their children towards something like that. Nobody in their right mind would permit their children to do it And yet, oh yeah, and that's the other thing. For the girls, now this study I'm a little bit dubious of. Forgive me. Forgive me if I'm being scientifically racist, because frankly the study is a fairly small study, and it was performed by a black female scientist who I suspect may have been a little bit biased, because the numbers are so high that they're very difficult to credit. But the point is that when black men father children on white women, there is a 2% chance they will financially support that child. 98% of the time, this is according to this scientific paper that was published, again, not by the KKK, not by some, racist, bigoted, hater white people. It was published by a black female scientist who performed the various surveys and stuff. Basically, it's on my blog. If you do a search, you can find it. Black men are not very good about supporting their children anyhow. We know that. This is not news. It's, you can just look up the welfare statistics. But they are particularly indisposed to support half-white children. And anecdotally, I can back this up. Go to Disneyland. Go to any sort of public venue that families go to, that families with children go to. And this is something I noticed 2 years before I ever saw this study. I'd actually put it up on the blog. You can see it. And what I noticed was that you saw, this was at the Paris Disneyland, most of what you saw was white families. To a much, much lesser extent, you saw some Arab families with children. You saw some African families with children. But what was most common when you just saw a mother with children or a child was a white woman with a mixed race child. I think we've been there twice, a week each time, and the entire time I think I once saw a mixed race couple taking their child there. It was almost uniformly a white woman with a mixed race kid. They don't stick around to take care of them. So why, we know why. We know Hollywood is trying to destroy the West. And so this is part of the cultural war. Well, the Asian flu, or whatever, rice chasers, yellow fever, whatever you want to call it. Part of it, the larger part of it, you have to understand, is actually from just military occupation. That's normal. This is soldiers bringing home foreign wives is entirely normal. And so when I was in Japan, I dated a Japanese girl. That's where you are, etc., etc. But in terms of the phenomenon, basically, there's a very simple rule that explains most of this, cross-racial attractions, and I'm the product of that. I'm an American Indian. Look at me. I look like my English Irish father. But you see my brothers, you can see, hey, oh my gosh, they're clearly not just English Irish. Anyhow, but the main reason that people do this is because people from the higher status races can basically move up a point or two in the attractiveness scale. I mean, you know, so that's why typically you will see usually the black guys that you'll see with the white women are usually with less attractive white women than the black women that those same men could go with. The same with the white guys who date Asian girls. The Asian girls are often much more attractive than the sort of white girls that those same guys date. So basically, all that they're doing is trading up, and that's another thing that's a lie about the Hollywood approach. What Hollywood does is they put two people who are more or less equally attractive of different races together, but that's not usually the case. I'm not saying it's never the case, but you know, you almost never see the same type of couples in real life that you see on television and in the movies. I actually think I think it would actually be quite funny to see a sitcom that actually portrays interracial relationships the way they actually are. But you know, that would pretty much completely destroy the cultural Marxist propaganda. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. I know who Melissa McCarthy is. I don't know who Kevin Hart is, and I don't know what the context of that is. But anyhow, so what we're looking at doing, what we're planning to do, you know, Castelia House is already publishing, you know, really good books. I don't actually care. You don't need to explain it to me. But the point is that what we're doing with Castelia House is going to be expanded. And so what we're going to do, if you go to the blog, you can see some examples. And we're basically going to be producing an alternative to Marvel and DC. You know, Marvel and DC have turned out to be fairly important linchpins in the propaganda campaign. And so we've decided that that's a good place to start, mostly because we have the right kind of talent for that, and we have the ability to do that. No, collections of short stories don't usually sell very well. So anyhow, what we're doing is we're producing a new line of comics called Alt Hero. And it is going to be extremely different than the sort of thing that you've seen from DC and from Marvel. It's going to involve the Global Justice Initiative, which is driven by the EU, and it's going to have a number of different superhero, supervillain groups, etc., etc. But the difference is that the heroes and the villains, the villains genuinely think they're heroes, and vice versa. And this isn't any sort of like angsty bullshit, you know, oh no, you know, somebody killed my mom and dad, and now I'm going to fight crime and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's going to be, we're not aiming to do cheesy, stupid stuff. We are aiming to do stuff that is significantly, not just better, but is significantly better than the kind of SJW crap they're putting out today. So we're not just going to go and say, you know, what a lot of people do, the mistakes that a lot of people make is they try to go back and just redo what was done before. Because, you know, SJWs always infect things. SJWs always ruin things. So sometimes when people want to fight back, they want to go and they just blindly copy the earlier stuff, the pre-SJW stuff. But we're not doing that. You know, we are going to come at it from a post SJW point. So that's, there's going to be both elements there. I think that this is going to be extremely effective. I think it's got the potential to be very popular. And I hope that you'll consider supporting the Kickstarter when we launch it. We will probably be launching the Kickstarter in 4 to 6 weeks. There is a very good chance that Kickstarter will refuse to let us, they may kick us off. We'll see. I already contacted them to find out whether they would consider it permissible or not, and they said, well, just put up the project and then we'll see. So, but it'll actually be a good thing if Kickstarter kicks it off, because that will simply generate considerable amount of attention for it, and that'll bring Alt Hero to more people's attention. The thing is, we're not going to give them any excuse to do it. If they do kick it off, it will simply be because they're SJWs who recognize the threat. And so, but you need to get the word out there. We want this to get, somebody said, well, what about using some of these other new crowdfunded options? It's not really an option for this, because we need to get the word out there to everybody. And so, because there's a lot of people out there who are not part of the sort of post-conservative, broad, the alt-right, broader community. There's a lot of people who just like comics. They're not political, but they hate this new SJW bullshit. And so we want to be able to reach out as broadly as possible. Why the crowdfunding approach? Because all this stuff is expensive. You can't, the one of the big weaknesses of the right, yeah, Amazon will sell it. There's no problem there. One of the big weaknesses of the right is they're constantly terrified that someone somewhere might make some money, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. The left historically has been much, much better about supporting its people. Now, of course, part of that is because they take over the foundations and they take over the big money granting mechanisms, and then they just pump the money into the political causes they favor. That's why people find it profitable to, like Anita Sarkeesian. She's made a lot of money simply by running around shrieking SJW, SJW, SJW stuff. Don't worry. We already have. We have the artists. When we launch the Kickstarter, we'll have probably we'll have about 14 pages from 3 of the different books, plus 2 covers, plus additional character stuff. You're going to be able to see exactly what the quality is doing. You're going to see exactly what it's going to be like, and you can already see. Yes, I'll be doing a fair amount of the writing. You can if you go on the blog and just do a search for Alt Hero, you can already see how massively. We are not merely rejecting the SJW narrative. We are prison raping the SJW narrative. The target is basically teens to adults. So, it's not going to be adult stuff in the sense of, showing people having sex or showing breasts and all that sort of stuff. And we're not interested in doing that. We're interested in telling great stories that are pro-civilizational, pro-civic, stories of the West. This is very different than, this is very different than, say, the stuff I'm writing with Selena, the Throne of Bone stuff. You know, I'm just doing that myself. It's not crowd-funded. I'm not asking people to make it happen. You know, that's something that I'm doing on my own risk. You know, so I'm very comfortable there, you know, writing stuff that is, you know, potentially off-putting to a lot of people. People who have read my books understand what I'm talking about. You know, A Throne of Bones and A Sea of Skulls are not for the faint-hearted. They're meant to be something that is more for the George Martin crowd. You know, so you know, I mean, like with the Quantum Mortis books, as one guy said, it's the first time I've ever read about impromptu eye surgery being performed during an arrest. You know, so that's pretty extreme. Everything from impromptu police surgeries to orbital artillery. But you know, that's just stuff that I'm doing. So I you know, on my own. So it's different. What we're doing with Alt Hero, because we're going to be relying on the backing and the support of a lot of people, means we have to be responsible. We have to be careful, and we have to not push we have to not push buttons just because we can. You know, but trust me, I mean, we're not talking about soft pedaling anything. Look up the examples at VoxDay.blogspot.com. Do a search for Alt-Hero, and you will see that these comics are going to be awesome. What we're planning to do, what we'll be looking to fund, we're looking to raise at least $25,000. That's going to allow us to produce four digital comics, and then we're also going to put all four of the digital comics together in about a 250-page hardcover and paperback, which Castelia will then publish. So, you know, so that's the objective. That's what we're working towards, and I hope you'll consider supporting it when we launch it. We'll have all sorts of, you know, different rewards and that kind of thing, but San Diego Comic-Con, possibly in the future. You know, we've definitely got some really cool characters. We've got some cool outfits. I have absolutely no doubt that people are going to. I have absolutely no doubt that people are going to want to cosplay Dynamique and Michael Martel and some of the characters that we're creating. I particularly look forward to people complaining about Ghost Dancer, who is one of the heroes, and it'll be interesting to hear them bitching about that until they find out that an Indian wrote it. So that'll be funny. But in other news, you know, all of this stuff, everything we do is going to be opposed. Everything we do is going to have SJWs trying to tear it down. And that's why we need your support. That's why we need you guys having our back. You know, we've seen, and Mike Cernovich was just trying to have a little seminar with 75 people, and they were calling in bomb threats to the venue. That's the kind of stuff we have to expect. That's the kind of stuff we have to know is going to happen. So be ready for it. Be prepared for it. Anticipate it. You've got to anticipate it. You know, we are already anticipating Kickstarter throwing us off. If we don't get the money for it, funding for it, we won't do it, because that indicates there's not a sufficient market for it. And that's the beauty of crowdfunding and kickstarting, is that it tells you ahead of time whether the market exists. Now, I personally think that we are going to, I mean, our real target is probably around 50,000. But I want to set a nice low one that makes it possible for us to do it. I personally think we're probably going to blow past both those amounts with no problem at all, simply because I think people are in the industry, in the market, are desperate for something like this. You know, Castelli is doing great. You know, I mean, Martin Van Creveld's book is Hitler in Hell, is esoteric. It's probably written for an average IQ of north of 120. And on launch, it went to, you know, number 734 on Amazon. That's probably, I mean, that's much higher than any book he's ever published before. And this guy, you know, this guy's a genius who's important. You guys made that happen. And so, if something as difficult and esoteric and inaccessible as a Martin Van Creveld book can do that well, imagine what something that is as totally accessible and as cool and as exciting as Alt Hero is going to be. So, anyhow, you know, I've got some more stuff. Oh, and somebody said, how did you get the idea to do this? I do a thing called Brainstorm. People pay to be members. We've got about 100 members, and we get together and about once a month, and we discuss various ideas. And so, when we were talking about what can we do on the cultural front, one thing that kept coming up again and again and again is comics. You know, and that was something that I felt we could do. It's $240 to join for a 2-year subscription. So it's basically the equivalent of, or for 1 year. It's like basically $20 a month. And so, but it's not just the closed stuff. We also did the open events, like for example the Steve Keen interview, which was open to everybody. I mean, it's basically it funds my monthly interview stuff. You know, it's just basically paying for the services that allow us to do that. Yeah, it's all at once. That's intentional. We actually set it up originally with both monthly and annual, and almost everybody said, "Can we just do annual?" So, and again, like somebody said, it does tend to weed out the SJWs, because what SJW wants to go and hand VoxDay $240? You know. So, anyhow, but don't. You know, that's not important. What's important is Alt Hero. What we'll offer the Kickstarter folks, we're working that out now. So, you know, obviously there's we're going to have some. We're looking at all the stuff that the successful comic-based Kickstarters have done. We also have a board game, computer game Kickstarter that'll happen afterwards, but that's separate, different market, appeals to different people, has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. So, you know, we're just learning this, and you know, but there will definitely be hardcovers. We can probably arrange. I suppose we can try to arrange for autograph hardcover somehow. That's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit difficult given that myself and the artists are, you know, on different continents, all on different continents. So, but you know, we'll figure something out. So, anyhow, thanks very much for tuning in. If you haven't seen Alt Hero yet, go to voxday.blogspot.com, do a search for it, and I think we've got at least 2 or 3 pages, full-colored pages up, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.